Welcome everyone to the fourth webinar of neuroergonomics. We are going to talk about the frontiers in cognitive neuroergonomics special section today. And let me switch to my presentation mode. So I hope you can all see my screen. I'm going to give you a very brief introduction to this section of Frontiers in Cognitive Neuroergonomics, which is one of the journals that Louis just mentioned that was just launched under the family of Frontiers in Neuroergonomics. And I'm going to present you with the ideas with the editorial board actually, and what we identified as the grand challenges for the field of cognitive neuroergonomics, to then basically hand over to four excellent speakers. I'm very much looking forward to four great talks today from the editorial board, all members that will also be present at the Neuroergonomics conference that Louis just mentioned. So, and I hope that you will all submit your contributions that we will meet again then back in September. Okay, so we are talking about the Frontiers in Neuroergonomics section, Cognitive Neuroergonomics. This is one of the 7 sections. I have the pleasure to be the specialty chief editor. We have an excellent board of associate editors for this journal. We have Carol Baldwin, Martin Bleichner, Louis Chuang, Stefan Gebner, Camille Genet, Rainer Kendrick, Rajana Mehta, Norman Nasser, Raphael Roy, Giovanni Vecchiato, and Edmund Wascher. And 4 of the editors are present today and will present their work and expertise to you. So why do we have a section on cognitive neuroergonomics actually? And what is cognitive neuroergonomics? Neuroergonomics, as defined by Raja Parasuraman 2003, as Louis already mentioned, is the brain at work in an everyday life. So neuroergonomics aims at understanding human brain function underlying human interaction with technical systems during work and leisure. And the term cognition here is used to describe a wide range of processes or functions, among others, attention, memory, decision-making, many, many more. All these that are relevant to human technology interaction. So if you bring together both terms, obviously, then cognitive neuroergonomics can be defined as the section of neuroergonomics that is concerned with the investigation of the neural basis of these cognitive processes involved in the user's interaction with a technical system at work or during everyday life. This is still a very broad definition of the field, and it is a broad field, but I think there are 2 points that are worth mentioning. First is that cognitive neuroergonomics uses insights from analyzing neural dynamics in ergonomic settings. So this is the place of investigation that we're talking about, that is the interaction with technical systems. But we use that to inform cognitive theory first. So we basically transfer our insights back to inform cognitive models and cognitive theory. And second, we also do the same basically with regards to a better understanding of human brain function. So this is a field that has like several directions, and we inform different areas that we use and utilize basically to drive the investigations in the field of cognitive neuroeconomics. So I think this is important to know that this goes in many directions, and not only that we're using these methods to drive cognitive neuroeconomics as a field. And if you talk about cognitive neuroergonomics as a field, then there will be challenges in the coming decades. We already faced a lot of challenges over the last decades, and the editorial team, us, or members of the editorial team and me, basically put together our ideas of what the main challenges will be. You can find this in this Grand Field Challenge paper on cognitive neuroergonomics and frontiers. It's open access. And if you're interested in that, please feel free to read the paper. I'm going to give a super brief introduction to the 4 main challenges that we basically identified. The first challenge is that the future in cognitive neuroergonomics will have to bridge levels in research in the field of cognitive neuroergonomics. If I talk about levels of research, we're talking about basic, translational, and applied research in neuroergonomics. So, as we all know, fundamental research It's mostly addressed in controlled, highly controlled lab environments that is then later translated to work environments. That would be the translational aspect. And this translational research then often uses expensive high fidelity simulations for improved realism. That is expensive. There's often restricted access to these facilities, but they enable controlled repetition of realistic scenarios. So you gain sufficient statistical power with a sufficient level of realism to still become more ecologically valid, but remain or have statistical power. And then in the end, and this is what Raja Parasuraman also wanted to push here, is that this research should also take place in the real world. It's applied research where we investigate the brain dynamics, the cognitive functions in real world settings while humans interact with technical systems. And here we have less control or no control about confounding factors, but we have high ecological validity. Actually, this is the highest ecological validity we can get because the lab is the real world here. So, and if you look at the x-axis here, you have experimental control, and you could add internal validity to this axis. And on the y-axis, you have the ecological validity. And so on the right side down here in the right corner, we have fundamental research with high control, high internal validity that then basically is reduced. Control is less and less. Internal validity is reduced when it comes to translational cognitive neuroergonomics, and then in the end, applied cognitive neuroergonomics. At the same time, the ecological validity increases significantly. And we, as a group, identified virtual reality and new mobile brain body imaging technologies to basically bridge these gaps. VR, while still in its infancy, already provides a relatively high level of realism. A lot of problems, obviously, might in the future be the low-cost method to bridge fundamental cognitive neuroergonomics and applied neuroergonomics, and to get all these different levels of research in cognitive neuroergonomics better together. This is one of the ideas and insights that we have in the paper. And two of these factors here, virtual reality and especially mobile brain body imaging technologies, are key factors that lead us to the second challenge. And that is that we need better mobile imaging methods to investigate embodied cognitive neuroergonomics. If you look at the majority of workplaces or even interactions with technical systems during leisure, you see that participants or humans are actively behaving. They are interacting with technical systems. I hope you can see the video, not the way I do, but you get the idea about this assembly plant here. There's lots of movement involved. There's lots of attention and motor control involved in interacting with these technical systems. So if we want to understand how the brain realizes all these complex cognitive and motor functions while we interact with the technical system, we need mobile imaging methods. So the majority of workplaces, as I said, requires active behavior, even if it is only head and eye movements and manual control of the system. But these motor actions influence cognition and obviously the accompanying brain dynamics, because any movement will lead to sensory feedback that is processed by the brain and by definition will change brain dynamics that we measure. It is thus imperative to understand cognition during interaction. And action here is like the bold term with the technical system. So this requires new approaches that are now available for cognitive neuroergonomics research. Martin Bleichner will talk about this in a few minutes. So the results, however, of these new imaging approaches, investigating human brain dynamics in actively behaving participants, will have to be compared against established study results coming from the labs, highly controlled setups, stationary setups, because the parameters might differ. We will be confronted with different outcomes in these studies, and we have to link them, coming back to the first challenge of bridging the different levels of neuroergonomics research. And at the same time, getting us to the third challenge that we identified, and that will be how can we generalize from physiological parameters that support specific cognitive processes on all these different levels of research. New results from fundamentally to applied, from stationary to mobile experiments have to be embedded in a theoretical framework to enhance knowledge, actually. We increase the amount of information every single day. The amount of papers being published every single day is more than we can cover as an individual. But it is time that we systematically create knowledge and not just accumulate information by integrating these parameters, indicators potentially even, that are disconnected from existing theories. If we do not embed that in existing theories and models and do standard falsifiable model research, this requires systematic cooperation of physiological, this requires systematic comparison, obviously, of physiological parameters across tasks and methods. And this integration has to be based on falsifiable models. Going back to research that works with theories and models where we try to falsify our assumptions and not confirm our models. And we can use different and new approaches, big data, and other analytical approaches, and cross-lab collaborations to really foster new insights into the field rather than producing more and more information that is disconnected with existing knowledge. And I think the fourth challenge that we identified is one of the keys to do that, and that is that we need to work with open access to data, to protocols in neuroergonomics. And open access is generally, as reproducible science, is essential to democratic discourse and the design of human-centered technologies. It is pivotal that we have data to access, to prove concepts, to basically falsify others' works if this is not robust science. Scientific practice needs to be reproducible and transparent. And I think one of the best examples that we just have is like the deletion of DNA sequences by the NIH, where we now have no access anymore to the data to really understand how specific virus families might have developed. So publishing experimental protocols, procedures generally, like VR protocols, the standard stimulation that we use in the lab, the data that we collect with these protocols, and how we analyze these data, all these approaches, the code has to be open access, free to work for everyone. And this kind of open access is essential for robust science. To achieve this, we should also standardize formats that we use in physiological recordings. There have been several formats over the last years, like BIDS for EEG, but also other imaging modalities that we can use so that we have an easy to share databases for all the labs, all researchers basically to work with this data and to check that everything is fine and to make better use of the data that is out there. With that, the four challenges that we identified, I would like to close and introduce very briefly only the four speakers that we have. And you've seen already Carol and Ranjana, who will be on the women's panel at the Neuroergonomics Conference. So we will start off with Brian McKendrick, who's going to talk about science engineering, neuroergonomics, use, misuse, disuse, and abuse. And this talk and presentation will be followed by Carol Baldwin, talking about monitoring driver attention and semi-automatic vehicles. Then we have the presentation by Martin Bleichner, who's going to talk about long-term ear EEG in the real world. What does it take? And the session will be closed by Ranjana Mehta, who is talking about human exoskeleton interactions and mind-motor machine investigation. Thank you very much for everyone being here. Thank you much again, Louis, for organizing, and thank you for the presenters. I'm very much looking forward to this talk, to the four talks, and I'm going to leave the stage now for Brian to start.